Hi, I'm Sharona Justman. I'm the co-founder of the Israel Conference, and today I'm delighted to introduce you to David Blumberg of Blumberg Capital, a venture capital group that has offices in the United States and in Israel. We're going to learn a lot about activities that are taking place, and with that, David, tell us a little bit about you as a businessman and how you started your venture.
Sure. Well, I'm a California native. Our family's been here for over 130 years. Um, we came in the gold slash silver rush from Eastern Europe, and like many Jewish families, we're very entrepreneurial. Many businesses were created, and then civic minded. Many social institutions, organizations, synagogues that the family helped create and organize. So I guess I'm just sort of a one more link in that chain. I grew up in Fresno, California. I went to public schools there, attended Harvard College, graduated there with a degree in government in the international relations area with a lot of work in economics. I started a company while I was at Harvard. I think that helped me on my entrepreneurial journey. I needed money to help pay for school, so I started something called Harvard Distribution Services. That over 100 students while we were there at school, and it gave me such a pleasure to be hiring people, satisfying customer needs, making money, delivering valuable services to the community, and it was just a self-reinforcing loop. You'd think about a project, you'd strategize how to do it, you'd execute it, you get paid for it, and it built and built. So that was really exciting. So that led me to think that instead of working in Washington, which had been my original plan, having a government background major, I decided to move more toward thinking about, instead of law school and a career in government or public service that way, I started to think I should probably go to business school and be something in the entrepreneur world. And I specifically wanted to work in tech. So I was very fortunate to be hired at T. Rowe Price when I graduated. I was a securities analyst for the technology team, and the technology team managed a big mutual fund, technology fund for T. Rowe Price. There were great people working there, people like Ed Mathias, Roger McNamee, Abby Joseph Cohen, Peter Wells. A number of people have gone on to even bigger and better endeavors at Carlyle, Goldman, Silver Lake, and so on. So I learned from some great people, and I established my first network of analysts and people who understand tech companies. Wall Street is full of people who are analysts, and a venture capitalist is really well served by having a network that you can call on to ask people about emerging technologies, companies, management, and get insights that are not easily found in the public, certainly before the internet existed. So that helped me launch my network. I went then from T. Rowe to Stanford Business School. I graduated there. I had a stint over at INSEAD in France, which is an international business school, to do an exchange program. So I got some international experience there. When I graduated, I began working for Fred Adler. Fred Adler was a mentor, and he was probably one of the top 5 venture capitalists in the world during his active work period in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and 2000s, I would say. And he funded hundreds of companies, and he was the first major American VC that would do any serious amount of investing in Israel. So I was very attracted to that, and he really deserves credit as probably the grandfather of the Israeli venture capital industry. He really was the first, and he was one of the best. He started many companies that went public, companies like that you probably know, Cytex, EFI, Elron, Elsint. He was invested in many of these companies, built up my understanding of Israeli, American, Canadian tech startups. Software was not sold as SaaS model then. It was much more difficult. It was sold as a system with hardware and software combined. It was much more difficult to sell into the enterprises, especially for startups, but we persevered nonetheless. And it got easier and easier. And certainly when the cloud developed and selling through cloud on what's called now the SaaS model, software as a service, it became a lot easier. And so the venture capital industry transformed into mostly a software-focused industry, which is what we do at Blumberg Capital. I went on to work at the Bronfman family office, managing large fortune of the Bronfman family for Charles Bronfman up in Montreal. We invested also in the same geography, Canada, US, Israel, a bit of Western Europe. And so that's the same that Blumberg Capital has done since I started that about 30 years ago. Blumberg Capital now operates from Miami, San Francisco, New York, and Tel Aviv. We have a portfolio of about over 60 companies now that are active. They range almost all across the enterprise spectrum, serving the global 5,000 mainly, and some mid-market companies, mostly software, mostly SaaS model. Mostly I say we operate essentially as outsourced R&D for the global 5,000. We build productivity tools, we build functionality, applications, infrastructure, mostly centered around the following thesis. Data is very valuable. It's more valuable than perhaps oil these days. So if you have proprietary data sources, whether it's in radiology or it's in insurance or it's in underwriting for banking or it's in mining or manufacturing, these sort of data sets can be extremely useful if they are mined or analyzed with the proper algorithm. Today we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, and that's the main value add that we can bring. So large data sets analyzed with the proper algorithm, whether it's traditional machine learning, which is best used and applied for columns and rows of numbers. Pattern anomaly recognition is the main goal there for just traditional machine learning. And it's excellent for things like underwriting improvement or logistics, routing optimization, or inventory management, all that. Then you go into the next level, deep learning, which is more involved in three-dimensional things, image analysis, video analysis, audio analysis. Those are future areas and that are exciting. We're seeing great breakthroughs, especially in the healthcare area. I can give you some examples. And then the last is this new area called LLMs, or we know it, the popular name ChatGPT from the OpenAI group and others. And these large learning models are a division or a branch of deep learning that is taking this massive amounts of data, the data of the world, so to speak, from the internet, and then following one of the main algorithms is what's the next logical word. So if I give you an example, you'll be able to understand. To be or not to
be.
Correct. You are an AI expert. That was well done. So that's what the ChatGPT does. What's the next logical sequence of word or words with the correct prompt? So that's what we're most investing in. It's a combination of looking for talented, innovative entrepreneurs solving a big problem that other people have not perhaps yet really fixed, using data, which they have some proprietary access or can gain that, with a smart algorithm, and then selling it often into a vertical niche, a vertical market segment. We find that that's useful because the entrepreneurs and their sales team can begin a repeatable sales process, something like wash, rinse, repeat.
Yes.
And they are able to get a momentum and a kind of a sales trajectory that is repeatable. Whereas we've had less success with companies that sell into sort of horizontal, more customized for each indication. I'll give an example of that. Many folks trying to sell into the industrial area find that a timber mill is very different from a sausage factory, is very different from an auto factory, is very different from an oil refinery. And selling into those unique circumstances require very different sales approach, style, customization, etc. So we've had more success in these verticals. And so that's where most of our portfolio is these days.
Of your 60 companies, David, you have because you have offices in the United States and in Israel. How many of the companies are Israeli companies approximately?
Over 25 are Israeli out of our 60 plus.
That's a huge percentage.
It's a good percentage. And of course, we're in constant contact with them. We have Monday morning meetings. We speak to them daily. They've been going through tough times, but my statement about the Israelis is that they're like the U.S. Marines. When the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Well, true. Before we address the current scene, can you tell us a little bit about a few of those Israeli companies and what vertical they're in, how they're performing, how they're driving revenue, what their teams look like, and even what they might need? Are they raising money still? Tell us a handful of companies that we could be very interested in.
I'll do maybe four or so. One, I'll just start with our biggest recent success. We had an exit, which means a sale of a company recently, a company called Finaro. It was born as Credorax. They changed their name relatively recently to Finaro. They're in the financial services area, specifically in payments. Specifically, they help merchants as a merchant acquiring bank. So Finaro is a merchant acquiring bank. It operates in every European country. They have a banking license in every European country, which they earned through a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and difficulties. And that allows payments. So if you think about the payment infrastructure, your issuing bank would give you a credit card. You have to pay them. Then there's Visa, MasterCard, American Express in the middle. It's kind of a payments gateway and insurance. And then on the other side of this merchant acquiring bank, and we make sure that the merchants get paid for the e-commerce transactions that you would do. So Finaro is a specialist in what's called card not present cross-border transactions. These are the riskiest. These are the most difficult. The opposite end of the spectrum is payment at a grocery store or in a restaurant, because the card is present, you have it, you give it to the person, they put it through the machine right there for the payments. Those are low-risk transactions, and we deal with things that are cross-border, like from buying from England into maybe a German website, and the card is not present at the site in Germany. They're doing it through e-commerce. So that's what Finaro does. They did, I think, last year $12 billion in transaction volume, and they recently sold, and the exit was to a company called Shift4, which is based in the U.S. That company, Shift4, is mostly card present domestic, and with Credorax Finaro being card not present international, it's a very nice synergy. The company, I think, together will perform very well. We're still shareholders.
What percentage of the market of card not present transactions approximately has Finaro been addressing?
Well, relatively small. It's a huge market. It's many hundreds of billions of dollars a year if we're talking about just Europe, and we're about 12 of it. So we're small, but feisty. We were a member of the Visa, MasterCard principal level members. So we had millions of dollars of shares of Visa when they distributed out. So I'm very proud of the way they grew. But the largest players are like Chase Payment Tech, WorldPay, First Data, some of those groups, which are orders of magnitude larger than Finaro.
That's impressive that Blumberg Capital was a partner in nurturing Finaro, formerly Credorax, into becoming a real player in this huge market.
Yeah, we were an investor before they had any revenue. So pre-revenue, $0 transactions the first year we invested, and the exit was for almost $600 million. It may be more because the share payout will be in shares of Shift4, and that is variable, and it's sort of up to a year from now. So we're hoping that they do well. But it was a nice exit. It happened even during this wartime, and it shows that business goes on, life goes on. We can't let the terrorists defeat us. We have to continue to live our lives, Absolutely. Be productive, be ethical, and march forward.
Any of your companies are addressing the popular area of AI?
Yes, most of our companies use AI in certain areas. I'll give you a few different examples. Let me start with cybersecurity, a company that you know well called BioCatch. This company is also doing extremely well. They serve, I believe, over 70 banking customers globally. Their main area is in preventing of fraud. The way to use it would be to use all the sensor data from one's phone or keyboard, and that data is analyzed by BioCatch algorithms, which are AI algorithms, to understand whether you, Sharona, are using your device or you've given it to your husband or somebody else. If you're using it, we know that it's you, the way you swipe, how hard you type, the characteristic letters you use, the apps and so on. Everything is very unique to you. Even it'll know if you're left-handed because you hold it in your left hand in a certain configuration. You're about 5'10", or you're very tall. I can't remember how tall you are, but it would know that because it would know how far from the ground. You're holding it on an average walk, and so on. So we take all these signals, about 400 of them. We can analyze any mixture of those signals every moment of the day. So even if you had a keystroke logger and we're trying to reverse engineer BioCatch, you couldn't do it because we have 400 different signals to choose from. We can mix and match which ones we're analyzing to know whether it's you, and you have your own unique signature, so to speak.
Wow.
So it's being used, again, very broadly. That company also we were invested in from before they had any revenue, and today they're doing tens of millions of dollars in revenue, very substantial growth rate, and they're headquartered in Israel, but selling all over the world. So that's another AI example of anti-fraud.
Let's jump to another vertical. How about travel, which is such a challenge? And
Yes, there's a number of companies. One called Fairfly, and I think they may have changed their name, so I don't want to make.
oversee.
Oh, Oversee. Thank you, thank you. And so they work in the domain of helping businesses get the best value for their travel dollar. So they work with travel management companies and large corporations. And what they do is they're essentially watching the arbitrage for the pricing differential between when you book the trip and when you fly. They can also apply to hotels eventually. But the point is, there's a lot of variation in this pricing. And so they can buy with the book and then cancel that reservation and even pay a penalty and still buy at a lower price oftentimes. And then they split the savings with the corporation. So it's a value pricing arbitrage algorithm. And they are, again, an Israeli company.
They've turned flying into a virtual stock market.
Well, it really goes to the benefit of the company to help them manage their costs.
I see.
Why waste money if you're overpaying for an airfare? It makes no sense when it's available. It's perfectly legal to do what they're doing. So they manage that price volatility. And that's one example. Let me move to another one in the completely different area in healthcare. I have two great examples. Again, they're using deep learning. The ones before might have been using more traditional machine learning for rows and columns of numbers. This is more imagery analysis. I'll give two. One is called Theator, Theator. That company is founded by an ex-Israeli Navy SEAL doctor, and he had operated on people, in the middle of war, on mid-ocean, under terrible conditions, and had understood that there was some need for decision assistance. So he came up with a smart idea. The idea is to use artificial intelligence to understand the video stream when surgery is recorded. So let's take an American example hospital, typical urological or gynecological endoscopic surgery, often can take 5 to 7 hours. That's usually filmed the entire time, but the hospitals generally don't keep that imagery, or if they do, it's very expensive. So now what we can do is have the best of both worlds. We film it all, but we keep, using AI from Theator, only the 7 or 10 minutes that are the important sections of the surgery, the time when we cut the vein or we suture the vessel or something like that, or remove a gallbladder, whatever it is. So that is being used to reduce dramatically the cost of the hospital to save this video data. It also helps prevent frivolous malpractice lawsuits, because when the lawsuit comes in and says, oh, you harmed Mrs. So-and-so, we can say, well, here's the video. The 7 minutes are the most important parts of the surgery, and we can show you that on every minute the doctor, the surgeon did the right thing or not. We can show it. So it's fact-based, not sort of just rumors. And then another thing eventually is about teaching. And so we can teach the new surgeons exactly how to do things. And they don't have to watch 5 hours of video. They can really focus on the highlights, if you will, to make it more efficient. So it works well for everybody. Let's look into the future, though. Later on, as the number of these videos increases and we're able to gather them from other sources, we start to build a database that can comparatively show, in a specific context and circumstance, should we remove an inflamed gallbladder whole, or should we puncture it, drain it first before we take it out? And it will show you comparative data from thousands of operations with similar blood pressure, weight, stature, age, health of the patient, and help the doctors decide in real time how they should treat that particular circumstance.
That's going to be a real game changer in the medical field. And sharing information.
And I give you one more in medical, and it's very relevant. It comes from Israel again, developing life-saving technologies. And this is something that, if people just let Israel be, the great technology that has and will continue to come from there is so amazing. So let me tell you a real story, true story. About 2 years ago, I believe, a woman walked into a Tel Aviv hospital complaining of terrible headaches. And the doctor said, we better do a scan because it might be something serious. They checked and they came back and they said, this is bad news, madame. You have stage 4 lung cancer. it's gotten up into the head area, and that's causing the pressure and the headaches. And she said, how long do I have to live? And they said, well, it's lung cancer. It's proceeding very fast. Probably 4 to 8 weeks is the outlook. And she said, is there anything we can do? And they said, well, it's lung cancer. So there are 28 different genetic variations of lung cancer. And we usually do pathology by taking a biopsy, this little small piece. We put it on a slide in under a microscope, and we look at the shape of the cells. And from those shape of cells, we try and determine what type of cancer it is. Now, there is one small, that usually takes 3 to 4 weeks. That's the problem for you. But there is a small new company called Imagene, Imagene, like Imagine, but for genetics. Imagine the gene. And so what it does is it uses deep learning, understanding the morphology, the shape of these cells of cancer in the lung cancer tissue, and it can derive the genetics. So it reverse engineers. It says, oh, look, that shape is this kind of genetic mutation. And of the 28 types of lung cancer, evidently there are 3 or 4 for which there are excellent chemotherapy treatments available. So they quickly tested her. She said, of course, yes. And instead of 4 weeks, that takes minutes, this Imagene analysis. And it came back that she indeed had one of the types of cancer that is treatable. That woman is walking around today, alive and healthy,
Beautiful.
In remission, because they were able to do in minutes the pathology that would have otherwise taken weeks, by which time she may have been dead. So I love to show that story because it's an example of, when we have data and we use smart algorithms, we can find all kinds of insights. And sometimes it's life-saving. Other times it's just routing the trucks faster. Sometimes it's making a better underwriting decision for insurance or banking. But it's useful in so many areas. And I'll give you one more because we've talked a lot recently about the tunnels that Hamas and Hezbollah and the others have been developing.
Right.
Well, Israel, in response to that, has developed some technology to look underground, with sensors, with a variety of different signals that they can analyze. And they've used that technology, and now we have companies that are benefiting from it to do it to civilian purposes. So, for example, one of our companies called VerAI helps to find mining resources, gold, copper, silver, lithium, cobalt, under covered terrain, using the same kind of signal analysis, now turned and aimed toward civilian purposes of metallurgy and mining and extracting valuable resources for humanity.
And so Blumberg Capital is putting some efforts in during this wartime since October 7th, since Hamas attacked Israel. And you've been doing a number of things to support society. I understand that over 700,000 people have been called up to reserve duties. So that leaves a lot of room for help and creative ideas of how people might move to different companies or start companies. What has Blumberg Capital been up to?
So we've had an ongoing, long-term, very active outreach to the community to provide services, seminars, meetups, sessions on specific topics, and they've ranged. We've had things on supply chain and logistics recently in Tel Aviv, where we got 100 people talking about that with a panel of experts. We had a fintech focused session not too long ago. We did something to help founders who are not technical find a CTO partner co-founder, and we think that 2 companies have been born from that fruitful engagement. More recently, since the Hamas attack, and I think it's important to say the Iran-sponsored Hamas attack, because we need to recall that Iran is behind Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. It's all part of a proxy strategy, and if we forget that, we're missing the big picture. Since that dastardly attack that Israel is responding to very successfully, the motions for us have been to support our portfolio companies, and that's many of them are well capitalized, so they don't need a lot of financial support, but they need some psychological support, some counseling, especially for parents who have kids now that are at home. Several 100,000 Israelis from the far north of the country and the far south have been relocated into central Israel, so those schools are out of session. So those kids are at home, and so their parents need some help just managing the rugrats. So that is something that we've done a session on. We also did a session on how to deal with the personnel matters. The Israeli government takes over the salary of those folks that are on reserve duty, and there are rules against firing people when they're on reserve duty. So we want to explain the personnel, operative, tactical issues that come up in wartime. Now, it is amazing to go back in history. Intel had fabs in Israel, and they never lost a day of
Right.
production. I think they lost one day in 1993 during the first Gulf War, but they kept those fabs producing semiconductors 24/7, 365 days a year. And so, for the American audience or people outside of Israel, it's hard to understand how life goes on, but it really does. Life actually goes on in Israel. People go to their jobs, whether virtually on Zoom every day or even into the office. Even though there are sirens, which means oncoming missile attacks, Israel is able to defend against most of those missile attacks through what's called the Iron Dome, an anti-missile system. And those people who live there and have jobs to do generally continue to function at relatively high levels. So we're very proud of them, and we wish them to go from strength to strength.
David, what is your outlook for months to come from now as to where Israel can keep going in going from strength to strength, as you say? Where do you see that strength happening?
Well, I think it's important first to look to history and then also to judge in current circumstances. In every prior warfare or attack by Hamas, Israel, the economy has bounced back rather quickly and stronger to higher heights. Again, as I said, over the past 20 years, Israel has gone from a modestly well-off country to now top of the heap in Europe. They're one of the richest European countries per capita. Their people are extremely well educated. They're long lived. Their life expectancy is expanding in Israel, whereas in the United States, sadly, our life expectancy recently has dropped, partly maybe because of the fentanyl crisis and other things. But life expectancy is expanding. My fun fact is that they eat more fruits and vegetables than any other population per capita in the world. So they eat very healthy. It's a Mediterranean climate, so they grow almost everything year round. So that's a blessing. They're very self-sufficient in food. They're also self-sufficient in natural gas and oil now because the development of the offshore fields have been very prolific. And now Israel actually provides the energy for the Gaza Strip and for Jordan. A lot of energy from Jordan is provided
As a supplier, as an arm's length supplier.
Right, from Israel. So, and then there was a plan, it was unfortunately scuttled by this administration, but the Biden administration, but there was a plan that Israel and Egypt and Cyprus together would take their natural gas resources and pump it through a pipeline underwater to Europe. And that, I think, would be a fantastic thing for the economies of those countries to wean us off of the dependence on natural gas from Russia. And of course, it would be a security line for those countries, in the case of cold winter and a cutoff from Russia. So those are some things that people probably don't know about Israel. It's quite a resilient economy. Israel also exports water, fresh water. It was a desert country when the immigrants started coming there in the 1910s and 20s, and they've built up such a robust desalinization program and a recycling program and water conservation through drip irrigation and other techniques that they're able to also export water to the neighboring areas of Gaza, Jordan, and so on. So it's a remarkable story. So I urge everyone to go and visit Israel when it calms down. You asked me to look forward. So my future forecast for Israel is very strong. Israel will emerge from this stronger in most scenarios that I can foresee. The issue is that Israel needs to complete the job. Israel needs to be given the freedom to decapitate the Hamas leadership. It needs to be able to stop the ability for Hamas to conduct these just merciless attacks against civilians on a regular basis. They used to just send over the rockets. This time they sent over the rockets, 7,000, which is more than twice the number that the Nazis used in the bombing of London in World War II. So I want people to get the volume,
the magnitude of it. But as you said, this is really an Iran affair, using proxies of either the Houthis or the Hamas or the Hezbollah.
Yes.
So perhaps we need strength from strength to strength across the leadership worldwide to stop Iran from continuing to prosecute their malicious behavior.
That's right. I think why did this? If we go a little bit political, why did this war happen now? Wars always happen for a reason. It's generally because the aggressive side misjudges the resilience and strength of the stronger side. So Iran / Hezbollah misjudged, and Hamas misjudged the resilience of Israel to fight. They thought that they saw the demonstrations in the streets of Tel Aviv disputing judicial reform as a sign of weakness in the country, and that was not true. It was a normal democracy having its discussion in a vibrant way, as Israelis do. The reason it happened now, I'm pretty certain, and I think not my brain, but many smarter people who study international politics understand it as Iran scared to death about the oncoming Israeli-Saudi rapprochement and normalization of diplomatic relations. That is a long-term trend, which is probably going to happen anyway. Iran is the enemy of the Gulf Arab countries, which are Sunni, Iran being Shiite, and Israel and the U.S. So the logical formation should be over time that the U.S., Jordan, Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain are all in an alliance of defense, and that we have then pipelines perhaps from Saudi Arabia through Israel going out to take oil, rather than having to go through the Gulf of the Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz, where Iran can cause mischief by blocking them perhaps with mines or shipping attacks and so on. So all this to say, I think Israel will be stronger geopolitically. And I think that the Saudis, while they went back on their heels for a while, understand that the real enemy is not Israel. The real enemy is Iran. And Iran and Hamas are also enemies of the Palestinians. That's the tragedy of all this, is that the Palestinians are being played. I'm not saying that they're innocent themselves necessarily, but the bad governance of Hamas is destroying them. If you teach people to be, anti-Semitic, they will become anti-Semitic. And that's what many Palestinians, unfortunately, have been taught for decades in the Hamas-run schools. If we can get that changed, and maybe Israel will do that in the future, things could get better. I think, people are people underneath it all, but if they have really bad governance, they can be pushed or prodded or coerced into bad behavior. And that's what we have right now.
David, this is a great summation and a great forward view to show the political side to it, the geographic side to it, and as well as the economic side, where there could be water, oil, and knowledge exported from the region in a commercial way that elevates the quality of life for people everywhere. That's an incredibly important thing to think about, not just the emotional side,
right,
but the quality of life for everybody.
And if I could go back to the area, Israel is one of the centers in the world, along with Silicon Valley, other parts of the United States, other parts of Canada, UK, other places, Singapore, Japan, that are advancing these areas of technology. And entrepreneurs are born, and they really are excited to develop and solve problems across the world. That is what we fund. That's the fun of being a venture capitalist. It's also the profit, because they bring new ideas that are valuable. And if we find them early, pre-revenue, and start funding them, then as they grow and develop and then exit, we're rewarded and they're rewarded. And the world is rewarded from their new products that serve needs that we might have never been able to solve otherwise. So,
David, I'd like to invite you back to bring together with a couple of your AI-focused portfolio companies to discuss the future of AI. It is a hot topic. It's an area that most people don't yet understand. And I think you could be the one to pull back the curtain and help us see it not only in concept, but through the lens of the portfolio companies. That would be terrific as a next discussion.
I'd be delighted. So I'd love to do that.
David, thank you very, very much for your perspectives, for the work that Blumberg Capital is doing, and for the nurturing of companies to get them from concept through execution into the world market. We'll have you back, and we'll keep the dialogue going. And until then, we all wish everyone success in life, and that Israel should be strong, and that the hostages should be returned 100%.
Amen. Thank you, Sharona. You're a light unto the nations. You are a star. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, David. Shalom.
All the best. Shalom.
To see more conversations with extraordinary Israeli entrepreneurs, visit theisraelconference.org.